Hello, everybody. Welcome inside the broadcast booth. My name is Brian Wright, National Keynote Speaker, CEO of New Patient Group, and the co-host of the Dr. Diamond Club podcast. Welcome in to a good webinar today, Positioning for the Future by Dr. John White. He is a valued client and very accomplished a lot in his career, and I'm going to get a little bit more into him here in just a second when we turn it over to him. Just want to show you guys some upcoming events we have coming up in September 21st, the 27th, 28th. You see the rest of the screen. A lot of notoriety. We have recently become partners with Align Technology. That announcement went out this morning, and they have made me a faculty speaker. So we have quite a few events coming up around the country. Looking forward to those events and helping a lot of people. If you'd switch the slides for me. We have a new website I'd like everybody to check out. We have a lot of clients on the call today, as well as some other ones that are not. And we launched this site. We wanted to make sure it was very educational. If you go to the Learning Center tab, you can open that up, and there's all kinds of webinars on there, advice how to grow your practice, very interactive, and you can spend quite a bit of time on there just learning good valuable information to grow your practice. And we do anything we can to help, and we hope you enjoy the website. We worked hard on it. And remember, subscribe on iTunes. Our Dr. Diamond Club podcast, our presenter today, Dr. John White's been a guest with us on there, and what we do on that podcast is simply try to give away as much information as we can about the strategies of the top 1%. And when I say that, our clients know what it means. We don't necessarily talk about the top 1% in healthcare. Of course, that's included, but with the competitive marketplace, a changing consumer, we very much focus on the growth strategies of the top 1% outside of healthcare and bring that into the healthcare environment. So very important. So remember to subscribe to that and listen at your leisure. You can also listen to it on our new website. And Dr. White, we're going to turn it over to you here in just a second. I again want to appreciate all of our clients joining today, as well as other people that are not our current clients. We hope you guys get a lot out of it today. Dr. White, like I said, is an existing client. I'm proud to call him a friend. We talk quite a bit, and he has a brilliant mind. I like picking the minds of the innovators who don't care about what the guy or girl down the street is doing. They want to do it their own way. And I often say that if your idea is good enough, it's going to make a lot of people mad. If it's not good enough, no one's going to care. So be the innovator. That's what Dr. White is, the leading Invisalign producer in the state of Ohio. And guy comes with a lot of accolades. So Dr. White, I'm going to turn it over to you. Have a great webinar. Hope everybody enjoys it.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate the introduction. And I want to thank you personally for the conversations that we continue to have. It's nice to have somebody that pushes me and at least listens to me sometimes when I'm on a rant. So that's been very, I'm very pleased to be involved. Today, the topic is positioning for the future. I believe that it's a timely topic because the specialty of orthodontics is at a time of great change. Years ago, there was no such thing as an aligner other than what we did in-house. And now we're about, good 20+% of the market. And the future, according to the subcommittee that reported to the AAO back in May, they believe aligner therapy will be half of the orthodontic market in the next few years. We're also seeing a lot of changes going around that we do not have control over. The consumer, and I hate that term as much as the rest of you, are somewhat taking control and driving the system to a great degree, fueled by direct-to-consumer and national marketing that's not done by the AAO and certainly not done by us. Talking about branding and positioning, we first want to start out with a little bit of a definition. Initially this came from branding, just the straight, these cattle are mine and they're not yours, and they have a burn mark on them to prove it. That brand eventually sort of morphed into logo. And while we can't walk around printing our brand on everything, most of us have our logo on most of the things in our office. So it identifies us. It is used as a way to let people know that it came from us, whether it's on the backpack or the pen or the coffee mug. But logos are now the newer version of branding. The logo itself, or the branding, it's come to signify the emotional feeling that we're hoping that our customers, our clients, our consumers, whatever term currently doesn't make you the most upset, we want that to be a good way to connect with them, so that when they see that logo or they understand that branding, they think of us, hopefully preferentially to our competition. One of the things that I believe is that the more focused the practice is, the clearer the definition of your position, the easier it is to brand, and the more likely people are to understand what we're about and either choose us or not. When we get done with going through some preliminaries about what branding is, I'm going to circle back around and talk to you about the kind of things that I've been focused on for the last pretty much 15 years, trying to change my practice. At this point, I'm 66 years old and decided about 8 years ago to change the practice. So it has more than doubled, with about 12% year-on-year growth during that time period. We had changed our branding to some degree before that, but more recently we've been very aggressive in changing the branding and doing it methodically. So if we talk about orthodontists in general, where are we now in our branding as a group? Well, if you look at the cover of our magazine, we're the orthodontic and dentofacial orthopedics. So this is what we do. And to my mind, that first term, orthodontist, pretty much everybody understands. Unfortunately, we no longer own that branding. In the state of Ohio, with the exception of practice limited to orthodontics or specialist in orthodontics, those are the only two prohibited uses of the word. So every GP out there that's ever thrown a bracket on somebody or put an aligner in a mouth or did whatever that was orthodontically related frequently has orthodontist or orthodontic practitioner or something on their website, on their business cards, and on their media of all kinds. Their Facebook page talks about it. So while it's a great term, most of us can't use it anymore without trying to go beyond it. The second term, the dentofacial orthopedists, when you say that to a patient, they just look at you cross-eyed generally. Yes, we can explain it. We do headgears, we do jaw surgeries, we do reverse pull headgears, we do rapid palatal expanders that are orthopedics. But while they understand that we do those things, that's really not a term that has much traction in the consumer's mind. So what is typical current branding? Well, I'm not picking on anybody. This particular web page comes from a friend of mine that I went to school with a long time ago. One of the things I noted when I saw this is when it says for more than 20 years in bold print, he's actually been in practice for nearly 40. So it can tell you how recently he's upgraded his website. So if you read this through, Orthodontics has been recognized as a leader, such as his practice, providing cutting-edge orthodontic care to the residents of fill in the blank. Our mission is to provide each person with a spectacular smile and a clean, comfortable, modern office with outstanding customer service in a family-friendly atmosphere. Unfortunately, you can go out and find a variation on this with different colors and half the time the same pictures on any one of 100 websites. A few years ago, I was talking with people at Google Analytics, and I found out that one of the ways we get knocked down on our Google ranking is the fact that we use boilerplates. At one point, 2/3 of us use Sesame Communications as our web provider or telebox. And if you notice, over 65% of most of the pages are exactly the same. They change the pictures, they rearrange where things are set on there, but the wording and the pictures tend to be repetitive from website to website to website, which, once again points out how generic this has all become. So look at the next one. Why so-and-so's orthodontics? Because we do free exams. We have flexible appointment times. We're committed to your satisfaction. We have convenient payment plans, we have financing available, and we're personal and professional, which describes probably 98% of us, which has very little distinctions unless you're talking about somebody that's working at Dental Works or Aspen Dental or some of the DSOs, where some of these things are a little less, shall we say, personal. The free exam thing, most of these things, if you look at the JCO, you will realize that the majority of things that we believe in are things we all believe in. So while some people charge for exams, the majority do not. As far as flexible appointment times, pretty much all of us run the same type of programs. We all say we're committed to satisfaction. We all talk about convenience and affordability, and there's nothing distinguishing or brand successful about this. Another one, what sets us apart? A beautiful, healthy smile is a feature that can have a great impact on your life. And you can read through this just as I can. If you just put down on Google orthodontist, type in a city, you're going to find at least a couple websites that have some of this same stuff. We've all cut it from the same place and put it all up on our websites. We're focused on improving the lives of people. We have an array of treatment options available, usually braces. We also have braces. We also have clear braces, and occasionally we have those little plastic things. But for the most part, treatment options comes down to, are we taking out teeth or not? And let's face it, we can help you smile with confidence regardless of what the day throws at you, which is a little bit larger promise than I want to make. So the current typical branding for the specialty right now is basically that nice guy, that nice gal that uses braces to straighten teeth. You can find on nearly all of them that the office is convenient. Now, this has been the #1 criteria, according to the AAO, for a long time. You figure on your radius to draw patients is the 20-minute drive time rule. That means if you are inside of 20 minutes, either where you work, you get your kids from school, or where you live, you are at least on the list of potential orthodontists that they'll come to see. This varies because there are places that are more remote where the closest orthodontist is an hour away. So you extend that radius. But by and large, 20 minutes determines whether or not you're an option for people or not. Affordability, I'm not sure what that means. It seems to vary. It may be low down payment. It may be extended payments. It may be that your fees are lower, or that they're more graduated, or that they're a la carte. Who knows? But that's been a big deal, particularly now with Smile Direct Club coming out and saying, save 40 to 60% off the cost of orthodontic care by using our take-at-home stuff. Office has to be clean. If you look on Google reviews for your competitors and for your own office, generally the friendly staff and the skill of the orthodontist are mentioned over and over. And for the most part, these people only have, their physician or the hospital where they go to, where friendly staff is generally not the norm. They assume everybody's skilled, but the simple fact is we all know there's a variable level of skill. And oddly enough, the term state-of-the-art technology turns up quite frequently on websites. And it's sort of funny to me because with imaging the way it is, the highest amount I've ever heard from one of the reps or from the industry, is that 25% of orthodontic practice use 3D imaging at some level. Whether you choose to use it or not is fine. I've been using it routinely since 2007 in both offices. We do everybody before and after with a cone beam, and occasionally during to check root alignment or to help a refinement go through. But the simple fact that it's out there and it's not routinely used, I will accept the fact that it is radiation. I will accept the fact that it costs a lot of money. But when you're talking state of the art, anything less to me is less than state of the art. If we're talking about mechanics, the CAD/CAM, virtually treated cases such as SureSmile, Insignia, and those kind of things, less than 10% of orthodontists are using it currently, and it's never been above that in terms of numbers. We are coming along with intraoral scanning technology. Right now, it's something in the 60%, depending on which of the reps you talk to or the industry, hopefully talking heads who know this stuff. But if we're truly this way, then if we're using state-of-the-art technology, an Elgin impression is expedient, practical, cheap. But as far as it being state-of-the-art, I somehow disagree with that, just generally. So we want to know who we're competing against. Again, going back to the old AAO, and since I've been at this for 40 years, I've unfortunately been around for a lot of the old AAO stuff. The rule of thumb was one orthodontist for a population of $30,000, where the mean household income was greater than $58,000. And that has been adjusted a bit for inflation if you go back far enough. But with this, if you're practicing in a town of 25,000 and the average median household income is 120, we have a much better penetration. But given that, and you find those communities, the community that I have my main practice in has 13,000 people with a median household income of 76,000. And we draw from a couple other small communities. But like most all of you, you can't throw a rock from your parking lot without hitting another orthodontic office or parking lot. So it's not like we have what we used to have. At one time there were 4,000 or 5,000 of us. Now there's 10,000, plus you add in every GP that's doing this. There's quite a bit of competition out there, particularly now that the DSOs and the multi-specialty practices have really gotten together and made this something where everybody has an orthodontist or a GP who practices orthodontics. So we're competing against them. Again, the branding is different, the delivery of care is different, but these are still factors in it. Recently, we have the direct-to-consumer things coming out. Smile Direct has changed the game in so many ways, and it has created, it's the earthquake that creates the tidal wave that engulfs a shoreline. So many of us, I believe, are still hoping that the tidal wave is not that big, not moving that fast, and won't make it to where we live. And unfortunately, I don't believe that. I believe that both what Align did as a direct disruptor of the type of care we provide and the mechanics of what we do, Smile Direct is going to change it. Now, I know plenty of ophthalmologists and optometrists who thought that 1-800-CONTACTS was going to destroy their world. But at least there, someone in their group was providing the prescriptions. For Smile Direct, we don't know who's providing it. And the 5 or 6 people that I know personally that are, the people that sign off on Smile Direct cases, 2 things. If they do less than a 90% acceptance rate as the patient is submitting their case, they don't hang around very long, and they have nothing to do with the ClinChecks checks that are actually produced by their software before these things are sent out. So I know that I get in trouble for saying things about Smile Direct, but I'm very clear as to why their Google reviews and their Yelp reviews are either 5s or 1s, and there is no customer support. Lastly, we have do-it-yourself orthodontics. Fortunately, it hasn't taken off too much, and the young man who made such a splash by showing he did his own aligners and said it only cost him, $20 or $30. That was interesting. What they didn't mention is the fact that he used $250,000 worth of hardware and software that he was using that someone else owned. What do we do in the face of these changes? Well, for a lot of people, it's same old, same old. They complain about it. They're lamenting the fact that orthodontics is no longer what it used to be. Well, there are almost twice as many of us, so that's part of it. They complain, and then they ask the AAO to protect us. They want to know what the AAO is going to do to make us better off, to keep the general dentist from doing this, from keeping Smile Direct from getting ahead. And they fail to realize that as far as the ADA is concerned, there's 170,000 general dentists out there, and there's only about 10,000 orthodontics. So who do you think they're going to side with? The AAO's budget isn't as much as Smile Direct spends on marketing, let alone everything else. That is a multi-$100 million company, and complaining about what they're doing isn't going to change anything unless we change. Our next choice is to get better at doing the same things. We do that. We've all done that. We all learn from our friends. We save a little time here. We save a little time there. We get a little cheaper bracket, or we're more efficient with what we're doing. And that's fine. That helps to some degree. We can send our TCs to sales training and close better, convince more people to what they want. And we hope that with the rising tide of beautiful smiles being out there, that we all benefit from that. We can also try to get the GPs to refer more things to us. And having been through the muffin runs and the lunch and learns, I got sick of the begging. Oh, why don't you send your cases to me? I'm a good guy. We do good work. I treated your kids. I treated your wife. I treated your staff. But if you look at the JCO, we all have fewer and fewer referrals from our GPs, and the percentage in terms of everything else is dropping. Can we compete better by reducing our pricing or reducing our fees, whichever term doesn't upset you more? Yeah, we can. But with our overhead rising, reducing fees, you're just going to see how much faster that you can go broke. How you adjust your fees is very personal. It's done almost regionally or locally, and you got to decide where you're going to fit in the group. We all secret shop our competitors. We all look at every third opinion, what they were priced out. But this one is one of those ones, it's a race to the bottom. I threw on Chinese brackets just for the fun of it, because I've got friends now that are reveling in the fact that they're able to buy brackets at 60 cents a piece. Great. Saving $200 per case is wonderful, but it's not going to save you from going under. Tossed on skating parties just because I've heard that once too many times. And lastly, in that same vein, the implementation of what the next consultant's flavor of the month idea is goes around, and it comes around, and it's back to the muffin runs, the lunch and learns, the skating parties, and all that. I learn a lot of things from people out there, but finding out that one of my friends in Des Moines just tried this new idea and he got something out of it, I don't know what it has done to enhance their brand other than spend some money on something that was a feel-good one time. So what about rebranding, or at least doing a facelift on your brand? The first thing you have to remember is the word or the name matters. If you have the term braces as part of your practice name, what are you going to do when the aligner community amounts to half, as the AAO predicts, and the patients seem to demand? I'll show you the next slide is, the brace place. Just Google the brace place and you'll find hundreds of them. If you don't have a name that's synonymous with the product or the service that's right now popular, the next best thing is to associate with an entity that does represent that name. A lot of people have done very well, aligning themselves with the Damon bracket. Ormco has put out a lot of advertisements. They spend money on the web. There are all ways that can enhance you. To some degree, you got a little bit of that from Smart Clip and a little bit of that from other things. A little bit more from Incognito if you were into lingual. And to some degree, when I left it off there, it was the Ormco's edition, which I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, so I apologize. Align has been good, but they're very, very clear about their licensing rules and regulations. There are there are many offices around the country that are trying to copy the look and feel of the Invisalign stores. Or they've used the word Invisalign in their URL and use that to redirect to their office. With the end of the litigation between Smile Direct and Align Legal now is trying to turn its attention to people that are incorrectly or outside the licensing rules using Invisalign prominently in their external signage and in their letterhead and other things. You can reference it, but you need to be careful on how that's done. Now that may be changing, but now that Align has its 4 retail stores, you have to be careful that you're not, running into those things. Don't know this person, just picked it at random, cropped off the name, but like I said, you Google the brace place and this is what you find. You will notice, of course, the photo does not have braces on it because nobody wants to look at braces. How about rebranding or at least a facelift? A lot of the following things are things that I have stolen liberally over the years from, a ton of different people out there. In particular, the books by Reese and Trout, which go back a long way. They've got nothing to do with orthodontics. They just talk about positioning and branding to a great degree. And while not all of it's applicable, it's certainly instructive. One of their first rules had to do with narrowing the focus to strengthen the brand. The generic, I'm an orthodontist and I do all this stuff, that has worked for a long time. But narrowing your focus makes it easier to brand. Whether it's the style of clothing that your staff makes or what they do, that particular focus on a theme will strengthen your brand. It can be focusing on a Damon appliance and going with the fact that it's a magic bracket and that by using it, they can do things that the rest of it can't, even though the AO has told them they can no longer use that kind of line. And if you use Damon, nothing against you. I've used it in the past, just currently not a fan. And currently I'm not a fan of anything that I have to glue to a tooth other than attachment. I'm currently at about 88% Invisalign and trying to weed out the rest of the fixed appliance cases as fast as I can. If you're possibly looking at a single option, like me doing Invisalign only or whatever it is that you want to do, you have to understand that this starts messing with other things. If you eliminate a certain group of people by being singular about your approach, you need to start thinking about a larger patient base and convincing them that a longer drive time makes sense. So, again, it's how you're reaching out, how you're getting your name out. Does the brand that you have generated and that you support and that you drive, does it have an appeal that makes it so that people are willing to drive a longer time to come and see you? Publicity and advertising, they're different, and one does not make up for the other. Both are helpful. Publicity is getting your name out there. That means doing things that are outside the norm, or if you're thinking this through, it means meeting some people at your local TV and radio station, making a connection with them, and then when something happens in your office, you get one of those cute little public interest things. The guy downstairs from me and I put in wind generating turbines outside of one of the offices. And oddly enough, after the write-offs and all that kind of stuff, it was a break even, but we had a lot of patients come to see us because of our attitude about green energy. That was publicity. We didn't say anything about my orthodontic office or his general dentistry office, but here was something that was unique and it was something that got attention, and we regularly find a way to get it back in the news. Advertising, this is keeping your brand front and center in the public perception. This can be external marketing, it can be Facebook, it can be a lot of things, but in any way that you constantly promote your brand once you've chosen what it's going to be and how you want to be seen. You want to make sure that it's in front of people over and over and over, because otherwise they forget about you. The dentist, for whatever reason, that has been referring you for a long time has started doing his own, or his patient base is getting a little older, so he doesn't have the 12-year-olds to send you. And let's face it, we all know that the demographic curve for 12-year-olds right now is lower than it's been in a long time and not looking to improve anytime soon. So if you're looking to find some claimable attribute that makes your brand different, you can use that for branding. It can be very simple. It can be something stylistically. It can be everybody in the office is wearing Hawaiian shirts. It can be the fact that you serve different things, all the stuff that we've all heard and seen from the consultants, or we've got a buddy that's done it. And we just, once you commit to it, it's something that you can sort of hang your hat on if you decide that it's significant enough to push, and if it distinguishes you from other people. Thing you have to remember is that the product or the service is only useful until it becomes generic and ubiquitous, sort of like braces are. Then it all comes down to the other factors that control the success of your practice. Are your fees affordable? Are they in line with people's expectations for the value they place on the result? Is your staff nice? Are you close by? Are your hours convenient? How well do you work with insurance companies? All those things become more important than the actual, service you're providing, the braces themselves. That's basically almost, it's above a product, but it's not true in experience for many of us. Credentials do matter. You really just need one significant credential for the centerpiece of your branding. Most of you have either an MSD or a certificate in orthodontics. Unfortunately, that's just table stakes. That's the ante. That gets you in the game. And in most states, that's not even required. State of Ohio, every single procedure that I do, anybody with a general dental license can do just as well. So this is not sufficient for branding alone, the fact that you've had the degree. Less than half of us are ABO certified. I got mine some time ago, and I could care less about it other than having the little certificate up on the wall. Unfortunately, the lay public either assumes that there is no such thing, or because there probably is such a thing, they assume that we're all boarded, even though that's not true. If you look on websites for different orthodontists, you'll find them telling people, I'm boarded, I'm part of X%. I don't even bother anymore because I don't believe people care. And the fact that there's both the ABO, American Board of Orthodontics, there's also the National Board of Orthodontics that is all orthodontists. There's the American Board of, I forget what it is now. There's a dozen of them, and we've all seen them. The Advanced Ortho Board for Aesthetics. Just throw a bunch of words together, throw in the word board, and you're going to find somebody that's got it prominently displayed on their wall. And most patients can't differentiate, nor do they care. Claiming quality, it just doesn't get you anything because you can't say it. Your staff can, your patients can, the guys that work with you can, but you can't say it. The last line here is sort of a joke that's been an ongoing joke for me for years. And what is the average orthodontist belief in their own quality of care? I have been asking this question at meetings I've gone to for decades, literally. If you asked 10 orthodontists, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel you rank compared to average? If the average orthodontist, and let's face it, the average that we as a specialty do is a very high standard. We do a great job of straightening teeth. Otherwise, we wouldn't be as successful as a specialty as we are. But if you ask 10 orthodontists and you average their 1 to 10, what I've come up with over the year is just give or take a point from the number 8. Statistically, it should be a 5, but it's number 8. So everybody feels their quality. You cannot find a website that does not state outright that the orthodontist is a quality orthodontist. Want to talk about adding services to improve your branding. We know people that specialize in TMJ. I made that mistake for about 18 years. Don't do it anymore. We have people that have expanded into sleep apnea appliances. Very laudable. It's a huge need. Early treatment, if you've been around long enough, you see it wax and wane. The timing seems to be coincidentally related to the number of 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds that are out there. When there's not as many 12 and 14-year-olds, oddly enough, early treatment becomes more popular. The number of people that I know that are doing Botox and fillers is just incredible. I don't know how they make a profit at it because there's so many people doing it. It seems like I can't find a physician anywhere I know that is not doing Botox and fillers to some degree, and they all complain that the margin's terrible. So great, TMJ therapy. If you want to spend your days doing that, great. Sleep apnea. All these things are great additions. The question is, are you doing it to fill an empty chair, or are you changing the focus of your brand? We've got a very good orthodontist on the east side of Cleveland whose entire practice revolves around treating TMD patients. It's mostly an adult practice. He thrives on that, and he does very well profitably because he charges them for treating their TMJ, and then he charges them for full treatment orthodontics. And he has a cadre of good support dentists for doing the restorative to make it work. So for him, it's a true calling. That is his brand. The sleep apnea people, great. It's a nice adjunct. It's nice to be able to tell the parents, the mothers of some of your parents, your kid snores. Yeah, well, we have an appliance for that. Oh, could you get one for my husband too? That's great. But right now, my net profit on a sleep apnea appliance and the amount of time it takes and everything else are just things I'm not interested in. It's not my focus. I am down to a singular point of focus. If you're going to do these things because you're filling a chair, it will dilute your brand. When you've got somebody in there sitting there with a sleep apnea appliance, somebody else over there on a TENS unit or having mounted models done, it's not the same one sitting there beside the kid who's getting an expander or the person who's in there to get their straightened with Invisalign. If you're going to do this as a long-term strategy to add these things in, great. You can brand it that way and you can make money at it and you'll find something, I hope. Consistency matters when you're trying to narrow your focus and get consumers, I know that's a terrible word, to associate your brand with its desired image. For me, I want everybody that lives anywhere within an hour's drive of Cleveland to think the term Invisalign and my name simultaneously. We've done that through a lot of different ways. Sub-branding, this is a minefield. We've all done limited treatment, but it's rare that an orthodontist talks about 6-month braces or 6-month smiles or these limited treatment things. We all do a little bit of it, mostly at gunpoint because we believe we're better than that. These people, the guys that do this stuff are not better at ortho than we are. The things they do in 6 months, we could probably do in 4 or 5 and better. But they're using this as a different way of marketing themselves. This is their unique niche. The problem with doing these things and the ongoing problem that we have the rest of it comes down to reputation management. We don't want to make the mistake of doing like the Holiday Inn Crown Suites thing, where everybody that went to it said, well, this is pretty much just an expensive Holiday Inn. They didn't see the benefit. Or back when Delta and everybody else decided to compete with Southwest and Spirit and all those things and spun off their own little unique low-priced airfare. Now the fight's out there, but you have to be very careful about how these things impact as we're moving ahead and we're looking at ways to compete with Smile Direct. Whether you want those patients or not is a decision, but if you're going to compete with them, you're going to have to find out ways of doing this and having a sub-brand without destroying things. One of my friends from the East Coast has an in-house aligner system with scanner, 3D printer, and he makes that his own for 5 and 10 stage cases. But how he's had to deal with marketing that without contaminating his Diamond Plus status has been difficult. So those are questions of how you're doing branding, particularly when you're doing some branding. I won't spend much time on logo design. The basic message for most of the things I've read is you want to keep it simple and directly linked to what you're trying to sell. And the fact that they think it should have a horizontal, 2.5 times the horizontal to the vertical, because that's how we see and so forth. Those are things that you can choose to, but your logo has to fit your brand. If you're going to reinvent a brand, it is best done when you've decided to make a complete change. You have to lay the groundwork carefully, and you have to be very careful about the timeline. Changing a brand overnight does not happen. You can destroy a brand overnight, but you can't create a brand overnight. And you need to remember that if you're doing a new branding campaign to dress up the same old, you're just putting lipstick on a pig. Sure, an office facelift will make everybody feel happier and it'll give you a bump. I wholly endorse redesigning your office or at least redecorating your office every 5 or 6 years at minimum. But the simple fact is, if you're doing the same brackets with the same treatment coordinator, with the same everything that you've been, it's not a new brand. Then you have to remember finally that all brands have a finite lifespan. At some point, things are going to change. The style of orthodontics that was done 40 years ago, where it was much more doctor hands-on And, if you started more than 130 patients in a year, you obviously didn't do a very good job. A lot of things changed. So that one disappeared. The current model has gotten to be, staff delegation, and it's been around with braces. What's the most efficient and effective way to use fixed appliances to make smiles and bites better? But my belief is that lifespan is coming to the end of that product cycle. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. I'm all in on aligners because I see that as an opportunity, and I've worked very hard to make it work. If you're going to do things, again, this comes from, I believe, Reese and Trout. The 3 cardinal rules for positioning are: be first in a new market or in a niche. This one is the easiest, but the timing is critical. If you just graduated from school and you're moving to Cleveland and you think you're going to be the first in this market to make a name for yourself, you need to hear my radio and TV ads or see my name plastered all over everything, because in this market, I'm the first. If you're not the first, you have an option. You can either redefine the niche. So you do a subgroup, like you're going to be the TMJ Invisalign guy, or you're going to be the early treatment Invisalign guy, because that's a niche that I have not really taken over yet, but I'm planning to. So with this, you can redefine the niche, or you can develop a subgroup. They both work. Or you do like 2 of my friends who happen to be my main competitors, you take a contrasting position. So it's how they're delivering their aligners and how they're doing other things with it. They like the fact that, the noise that I make makes the aligned product a much more popular thing and easier for them to sell, but they position themselves against me. They're doing this, they're doing that, and I applaud them. The 3 biggest competitors I have are all friends of mine who I have nothing but respect for, but they've very specifically realized that they're not number 1. They never will be, but they can take the Avis to my Hertz position and make it work. You need to stick to whatever your core product is if you're really working on positioning. If you can change your delivery system, that's fine. So the reputation for being a very good orthodontist at different things can be morphed into being a very good Invisalign provider, provided that you maintain the level of care and quality that you did before. And just need to explain to people that you feel there's a better way to do things, that you stop doing the same old way, and you're going to provide that same level of service or actually enhance it to make it better. Sort of a side note before we run back here a little bit, the orthodontic business model right now, I'm seeing this as 5 levels, 2 of which may not apply. A commodity, if you think of that as something sold on the commodity market like tin, aluminum, steel, not so much steel because it's mostly a product, but when you look at a commodity, it's something that's dug out of the ground or harvested. There is no analogy in orthodontics. A product is where they've taken a commodity and turned it into something that can be used. This is like the at-home or not doctor directed, but like Smile Direct or Candid type aligner therapy. You're buying a product, it is not a service. The next level up is a service. And for most of us, we've all been through this phase at one time where it was basic, no frills orthodontics. If you're cutting your fees back and you're trying to compete with Smile Direct or Aspen Dental or Dental Works or those things, you're really trying to focus on keeping your costs down. It's no frills. And that's a service. And if we do the service well, we've made a living at a long time. But when you look at the reviews for practices that are doing well, the ones that have a lot of Google reviews and they're 4.6 and on up, they talk about the experience. They were well treated. They had a good time when they were there. So this is the one that we've all been focused on for a long time, making a nice environment, having a friendly staff, and making sure that the experience these people had was good from the first phone call to the day they walked out and were told that they don't have to wear their retainer except at night for as long as they felt comfortable. The next step is transformation. This is when the experience is totally immersive. This is where you've got raving fans because they felt like they were family and that you got them to buy into the fact that you totally transformed their life. So those are the things that right now sort of drive me and where I'm headed. If we run back through to the beginning here briefly, sorry about this, try to be a nice guy. I believe our office is convenient. The things that we're changing mostly is doing things to reduce the number of patient visits. So with Invisalign, we're seeing them at a minimum time interval is 13 weeks. We've adopted the dental monitoring system so that people that drive from a distance, and we have about a third of our practice that drives at least an hour to and from to get here. It's a clean place. I have a friendly staff, otherwise they're fired. I'm considered to be a relative thing. And Brian just gave me a message. So let me do one or two other little things here, and then we'll go right to those. Cone beams, we've had them for 11 years. We've been using Sure Smile, Insignia, and we did Incognito and all those things. I don't care for them anymore. We've been doing intraoral scanning since the first iTero came out, and I've got even an old Omnicam from Sirona. I've decided that I'm going to compete against Smile Direct by structuring things differently and working along those lines. We changed our name from Braces by White about 6 years ago to Smiles by White, so that the brace was no longer part of it. If you walk in my exam room, there's no Typodont with braces sitting there anymore. So we very definitely narrowed the focus, and it is Invisalign only. We're focused on doing that to do everything. We get lots of publicity from doing events, and I spend a lot of money on advertising, a ridiculous amount, but it has paid back many times over. So for its credentials, I was the first elite, the first top 1%, and I'm currently the top aligner in the state of align provider in the state of Ohio. Boards already. We don't talk about quality, we talk about experience, because nobody else can match that one here. I do TM syrupy, I do sleep apnea, I do early treatment, and most of them are done with Invisalign type things. We do limited treatment quite a bit, and Invisaligns give me the opportunity to do that. So with that being said, I will turn this over to Brian. And or are you going to ask me, Brian? You going to talk to me or text me?
Yeah, I'll just read out the question. There's a couple of them, and the first one from one of the doctors is: have you implemented full box delivery? So, are you given all the aligners at the front end of the treatment yet? Is that how you do it, or how do you do it?
Okay, I am the main person, the facilitator for the Pioneer Study Clubs, which is comprised of 90 members that are all either diamonds or diamond pluses. And the consensus is there, we hand them out. At first, my wife, who's my bookkeeper, was having a fit about that. But the simple fact is, we don't have anywhere near enough storage to handle 600 Invisalign starts, followed by 2 refinements each on average. That would eat up 600 square feet minimum, just having boxes stacked. We also have multiple locations, so they're unfortunately a little bit too close, so people end up going from one practice to the other, and we don't know where their aligners are, so we started handing them out over a year ago. The idea came from Mark Farina down in Tampa, because he's in the same category, and it's been endorsed by everybody I know that's a Diamond Plus, because we just can't store them. So we hand them out. We've had no problem with delinquency or any other issues. It means they always have them. If somebody calls up and says, these things are really loose, can I go to the next one? The answer is yes. And just all in all, we hand them all out. We did it initially just for refinements. And then after 2 months of doing that, I just said, fine, whatever. We've been handing them out now for probably a year plus, and we've had no issues with it whatsoever.
So another question that relates to that, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because we hear, for those of you listening, we obviously have exposure with a lot of doctors out there, and the ones that hand out all the aligners up front, it's a consistent theme of them not having any issues with treatment. Everything goes smoothly. So it's something we suggest. You listen to Dr. White, do that at your practice. And then do you see them along the way when you give out all the aligners up front? Are you seeing them regularly? How do you handle follow-up appointments?
We have them come in every 3 months, but it takes the burden off my receptionist, because if they're out there and they've got 28 stages in their first series, and we say, well, we'd like to see you in 12 or 13 weeks, if that's inconvenient, they can go 16 weeks without us having to mail anything to them. So they appreciate the flexibility. It takes a huge burden off my receptionist. We've had no downside. We had one person whose house burned down, and let's face it, getting a line to replace them only took us a week. Not difficult. So we have had no issues by handing them all out at all. And that's, we're talking about handing out, 600 starts in the last year and handing out 1,200, 1,300 refinement series. So I think that's a large enough sample size to say it's not a problem.
Yeah, I would think so. So another question that's been typed, for the practices that have not adopted the clear aligner model, whether they fight over the lab fee or they're kind of just stuck the way they've been doing it for many years, where do you see those practices ending up in 5 years?
Well, if you believe the AAO's study saying that half of all orthodontics is going to be aligners, you have to temper that with the fact that a lot of those are new people coming in that would not have done orthodontics, and the majority of them are adults. I'm at 65% adult, which for most orthodontists would be a nightmare. I mean, adults are much more difficult to deal with. They're more demanding. They're more likely to give us grief about what we're saying to do. They're more likely to say, I'll wear the things when I feel like it and I'm paying for it. So, if it's not working, it's because I didn't do it right, and blah, blah, blah. So, if you're not doing aligners, you need to look at the trends out there and decide whether or not you're going to be practicing long enough where it's going to matter. Are you in a place where the population is less likely to be interested in aligners? If you're in a population of first generation immigrants, many of them want braces as a status symbol. So friends that I have there have some difficulties offering aligner therapy to people that are coming in for braces. They're not coming in for orthodontics, they're coming in for braces. So for that, there may be some issues. If you're going to start out with one of the Me Too companies, I'm fine with that. They may give you a price break, but from what I've understood, with the single exception of ClearCorrect, nobody's cutting much of a deal, except on the kind of cases that anybody can do. And the ones that anybody can do, the GPs are doing. So, I don't want to compete with them. I want to, as we've said in our media, that I will treat anything with Invisalign as long as we draw the rules about what their expectations are. So for me, a lot of adults where they've got a lot of porcelain that's been, finely ground in by an OCD dentist, I don't want to move those teeth. So we're doing more limited treatment of anteriors, particularly when you're doing a retreat on a 4x case. You've got some restrictions, and you see some of these people and you're going like, I don't want to mess with those teeth. So trying to segment this is part of it. I know I wandered from the initial question, so I'm sorry. If you'll repeat it, I'll go back.
No, I think you answered it. I think the original question was just where do you see practices in 5 years, maybe more, maybe even a tad less, that don't adopt the clear aligner model. And I think you answered it in the AAO, Dr. White, and everybody listening. Even if you don't believe the AAO studies, everybody, there's another pretty unique study out there that you can see via Google Analytics that the number one search term in orthodontics is Invisalign, and the number two search term is Invisalign misspelled. So that right there shows you that the consumers are out there looking for clear aligner products, and so important to partner your practice with that clear aligner model.
Yeah. And like I said, it's the most Googled term in dentistry.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, well, it's something, I still say that this thing is a tidal wave. Turning your back and saying it's not happening is not an option. And when it comes, trying to outrun it is not an option. So get your feet wet, get in there, eat the fact that, if you've got no chair time available and you're just killing it with fixed appliances, God bless you. Not a place I want to be, but God bless you. Keep doing it up until you can't. But if you've got chair time and you can afford to do what I did when I decided to go to be the first elite in Ohio, let's say I'm less interested in the profit on these than I am learning how to do it and developing the reputation for being the go-to. So
Sure.
just like you paid money to go through your residency, you paid money to go to the Roth course or the Ricketts course or whatever. That was a lot of money. Well, after you get through the first couple hurdles and your price from them, your lab fee goes down. My lab fee is, not even, it's barely half of what people pay that are just starting out. I had to go through that $250,000 worth of cases to get to that point. It's easier to get to now than it used to be because you can just ramp up and do it. So if you eat it for 6 months or a year, your fee will come down. You'll see patients that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, and you're setting yourself up for the future if indeed what I believe to be happening and the AEO is saying comes true. So to me, it's all planning out 5 to 10 years in advance.
Yeah, I think a lot of that makes sense. We have another question from a participant, and that question is how do you handle the patients that aren't wearing their aligners properly? How do you go about that? You make them come in more often? What do you do?
No, I just ask them. I'm not giving you the lab feedback. I'm not giving you a certain percentage of my overhead expenses. Did you want to quit now? Because if you do, I'll write off the rest of your fee. If you want to continue getting your teeth aligned and it's not with aligners, my associate will be happy to put on a set of braces and get you something better. There's no charge. I want to have happy people leaving here, and I want to fulfill as much of my promise to you is. But if I go to my cardiologist and say, yeah, I stopped taking all my high blood pressure pills, so I'm back to 180 over 120, and they just look at me like I'm going to die, what are they going to make me do? It's an elective procedure. It's up to them to either do it or not. It's their money that's going down the tube. And I just look at them and said, I will support you in any way you want. If you need to take a break and come back, you got up to 5 years to do this. If we go beyond that, there's going to be an additional charge. This is an enhancement to your life. You can either take advantage of it or you can walk away, and I'll just clear the decks and say, thank you very much. I'm sorry that didn't work for you because you chose not to.
Good stuff. And for the doctor on here that asked that question, this will be good information for everybody else. Consumers, ugly word, I know, but they need to be educated, especially today, more in the past, in a very different way because of how bombarded they are, information overload with everything out there. So there's very specific protocols and processes that your staff needs to walk through with every patient you receive that educates them in a way that makes them more likely to wear their retainers, or their aligners. So you don't run into issues like that. So that was a good question, a good answer. And then how do you teach patients to monitor their align tracking and that will help you reduce the visits?
Well, if you're going to do it without the dental monitoring app, which dental monitoring app, it's been out, it really sort of started heavy last MKS in November last fall. And this one, it's $8 a month per patient. And, they have a set of lip retractors that have a hinge in the middle so they don't have to hold them. They can scan it and they can actually get a good readout. And it allows us to monitor patients even more closely than we do when they're not doing it because they're looked at once a week. It's delegated to my staff. The software will give you a basically green light, which means it's tracking well. It'll give us an orange light for issues, and it'll give a red light if it needs to be looked at by me and the patient needs to come in. Short of using that, and again, since it costs about $60 to pop somebody's butt in my chair for a single visit, me spending $180 on, a 12-month or a 24-month case to do dental monitoring, that's cheaper. So I'd rather spend the money that way and explain to that. And also we do it as an encouragement for those who have to drive a great distance. I have people that are in Japan, China, Thailand, England, Arizona, Florida, New York City, and others that are active patients doing dental monitoring. They can also do it with a photograph. If they want to take them, they're usually out of focus, but at least you can see. Or, we just tell them, look, when you look in here, if you see daylight between the tooth and the plastic, it's not tracking. We use quite a bit of Acceladent and V Pro 5s. We've tried different other accelerators. We've tried Chewies. We've tried, pretty much a number of things. We encourage our teens to chew gum, sugarless, of course, to help seat their posteriors. If they have any, habit of chewing gum, it's like, hey, this is fine with us. Just make sure that it doesn't stick. And if it does, put your aligner in ice water, pick it off, and choose another gum next time. So it's just back and forth. If they go in and they're tight, you need to wear them more. If you see a gap, you need to come and see us, because I don't mind being a little off track, but being majorly off track, that just means another refinement, which means, 30 minutes of chair time and attachments on or off. And we're trying to minimize the number of optimized attachments, because conventionals can be reused. Optimized lose their optimization if they're reused. So we're trying to streamline this and make it scalable.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And just a couple points I want to make for the listeners that Dr. White brought up earlier, talking about some digital marketing with social media, being in front of people constantly, and then also the web design. Something that, we teach our clientele, so the clients on here, you've heard this a million times, but just something that you need to think about with your practice is exactly what he said. The web designs cannot be by somebody that does it the same way for every one of their clients. It is not a way that you will separate yourself from the pack. As well as your digital marketing needs to be something that is posted multiple times a day to multiple platforms out there. And by doing that, will you annoy some people that live on their Facebook page all day? Sure. My mom, she's 68, survives and lives 24/7 on Facebook. So yeah, she'll probably see your stuff. It may even annoy her. But the facts are, most people are on information overload, and you have to have your brand and your postings about dentistry, about orthodontics, but also just things to get them to fall in love with your personal life and your personality and your staff over and over and over again. Do not underestimate the importance of brand awareness by posting multiple times a day. Has to happen. So great job. Looks like there's no more questions. So great job, Dr. White. We really appreciate that information, and we'll be talking to you soon. Hope everybody got a lot out of it out there. To our clients, we appreciate you joining. This will be recorded, housed in your practice growth platform. We'll get this edited up and in there within the next week. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Bye-bye.